What's up, everybody? It's Clark here for the BOS Sports podcast. More bad news for us Atlanta Hawks fans, as Atlanta Hawks are now on a six-game losing streak after losing tonight to the Houston Rockets 196. They're now 22 and 25 on the year, are in ninth place, and looking at potentially falling out of contention for the play-in portion of the playoffs. Jalen Green absolutely went off tonight for Houston Rockets, having a game high at 25 points, 7 rebounds, 11 for 24 shooting from field. Pretty nice overall shooting from field. Although from three-point land, he was only 1 for 9 as well. He had 7 turnovers on the day. Alperen Sengun, he had a nice double-double with 18 points, 10 rebounds, 2 of those rebounds offensive, 7 for 12 shooting from field, 4 for 4 from free throw line as well. Deshaun Tate off the bench, he had a monster 16 points with 6 for 6 shooting from field, 4 for 5 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds. Dylan Brooks as well, he had 11 points tonight with a little bit of struggles from field, 4 for 12, 33.3% for Dylan Brooks from field. Amin Thompson as well, he had 11 points, 2 for 5 shooting from field. Trae Young for Atlanta Hawks, he had 21 points, 9 assists, 3 rebounds, 7 for 16 shooting from field, 2 for 9 from three-point land, 5 for 5 from free throw land. He had 8 turnovers, unfortunately, for Trae Young. DeAndre Hunter off the bench, he had 16 points after the monstrous 35-point game he had last night. Followed up tonight with a nice 16 points, 5 rebounds, 6 for 15 shooting from field, 1 for 7 from three-point land, including the go-ahead potential bucket there in the final seconds there for the Hawks. A little bit of struggle shooting there for DeAndre Hunter in the second half, as in the first half, he shot 50% from field, and he struggled a little bit in that second half there. So the Atlanta Hawks overall, they struggled shooting. Dyson Daniels as well, he had a double-double for the Hawks, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, 4 for 12 shooting from field, 1 block. Pete Krejci, 13 points. He struggled again tonight with 5 for 14 shooting from field, 2 for 10 from three-point land. He had 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 1 block. Nice defensive effort on the day for Pete Krejci, Dyson Daniels, and this entire Atlanta Hawks team, as they had this Houston team really reeling in the first quarter and at times held them scoreless for minutes, multiple minutes of the game. So, of course, in this podcast, we look at 3 key stats to whether or not basketball team wins the game. Of course, that's field goal percentage, rebounding, turnover margin. And today, Houston Rockets, they won 2 of those, even though they lost the turnover margin handily to the Hawks, 21-16. They won the field goal percentage quite handily, 46.8%. The Hawks, 40.4%. As well, the Houston Rockets won the rebounding margin, 44-40 over the Hawks today. Tough day for the Hawks. Tough time for the Hawks. We saw Bogdanovich out for the game due to personal reasons. As well, Clint Capella, he was scratched late due to back spasms. Trade rumors swirling around this Atlanta Hawks team. Jalen Johnson was seen with an arm splint on the bench, finally back. His first game back since Thursday. You've seen on the bench, no update, no official update from the Atlanta Hawks. Oh, tough time here for Atlanta Hawks. So here we're going to dive into some recap here of this Atlanta Hawks game. Later this episode, we're going to explore some trade possibilities, some of the wildest ones we can think up here for the Rockets and the Hawks, with trade rumors aforementioned swirling around Clint Capella, Bogdanovich. Bogey could potentially fit on the Rockets. As well, De'Aaron Fox, a big name, swirling around today in trade rumors earlier today. There's a few scenarios where he could be traded, including the Houston Rockets. They could match the salary with Fred VanVleet. And they would have to, the Kings, they would have to, combine salaries, a couple different players to make that happen. So coming back to you here to this Hawks game, Trae Young and Dyson Daniels, they both came back for Atlanta Hawks after missing yesterday's game. Gay gets the start today at power forward. Interesting lineup with Onyeka Okongwu at the center and Bogdanovich, aforementioned sit. Zachary Rizachet, he's a late scratch with the hip injury management. Rockets, they were without Steven Adams, playing on a back-to-back themselves after beating the Celtics last night in a close game by 2 points. Steven Adams, of course, he was held out the season prior due to recovering from surgery. So being a bit cautious with Steven Adams, officially listed with illness slash ankle soreness. Jabari Smith Jr. as well was out for the Houston Rockets, as well as Tari Easton. So the first quarter of this Hawks-Rockets game started with Alperen Sengun score. Their hook shot there in the lane. Their 11-minute, 26-second mark. 2-0 Rockets early. Mo Gay, he got a layup. About half-minute layup. Half-minute later at the 10-minute, 56-second mark. And the Rockets from there, they opened up a quick 7-2 run as they would score 5 straight points after that, capped by Dylan Brooks 3 at the 9-minute and 52-second mark. Dylan Brooks, he'd shoot 3 for 8 from three-point land, hitting 3 of those, getting 11 points. Though overall, he would have probably liked to shoot a little bit better on the day for the Houston Rockets. That doesn't matter, though, because they got the win. So nearly a minute later, Dyson Daniels, he answered right back with off of Trey's first assist, getting the Hawks to 5 points, 7-5 Rockets at that point. And that was the start of a 14-0 run for Atlanta Hawks. Capped by a Trae Young floater at the 6-minute, 54-second mark, his 6 point. 16-7 Hawks at that point. Things were looking good for the Hawks as the Hawks were out hustling this Houston Rockets team on the back end of the back-to-back here. The Hawks were out hustling them early and preventing them from scoring. Their first field goal would finally be at the 6-minute and 38-second mark. And it was their first field goal since the 9-minute, 52-second mark. Aforementioned, the Hawks were out hustling the Rockets coming out of the back-to-back. So this is the BOS Sports Podcast. We're going to pause right a second for station identification. So a little bit later, Amen Thompson, a part of his 11-point effort, I believe. There at the 6-minute, 11-second mark. He got 2 for 2. He got fouled and hit both his free throws, cutting the Hawks lead to 5 points, 16-11 Hawks. Cam Whitmore, seconds later, he had a bucket at the 5-minute, 39-second mark. As Rockets started going on a 6-0 run themselves. DeAndre Hunter, he answered back at the 4-minute and 56-second mark with a jumper. Hawks lead still by 5 points, 18-13 at that point. Larry Nance Jr., he had a 3. Nice to see him get a bucket there from beyond the arc. At the 4-minute, 33-second mark, 21-13. Hawks up by 8 there late in the first quarter. Dylan Brooks, he had the answer with a jumper at the 3-minute, 52-second mark, 21-15 Hawks. Fred VanVleet, he had a 3-point shot there at the 3-minute, 25-second mark, cutting the Hawks lead to 21-18 at that point. The Rockets, they went on a nice run there in the second quarter. The first quarter, that is, ending the first quarter 27-22. DeAndre Hunter, he had a 3 with 9.9 seconds left. To fend off the Rockets' comeback effort just a little bit there, giving the Hawks a decent 5-point cushion as opposed to what would have been a 2-point cushion. He missed that shot. And unfortunately, that would be the only 3-point shot that DeAndre Hunter would hit the rest of the evening. DeAndre Hunter, he did finish that first quarter with 6 points. Trae Young, he had 3 assists at that point after the first quarter. So the second quarter, it starts Keith Walton's bucket, and after nearly a minute, as both teams really struggled here on offense all night. And it's characterized by the slow start to the second quarter. So Keaton Wallace's 4th point there at the 10-minute, 57-second mark put the Hawks up 29-22. Jalen Green, he answered seconds later, 10-minute, 57-second mark with a reverse layup, 29-24. Hawks still had a nice lead by 5 at that point. If Jalen Green, he was starting to cook at that point. Got another bucket earlier, just seconds later, after a Houston timeout early in the second quarter. Hawks up 31-26. Okay, he got an offensive board, put back score. They're at the 10-minute, 44-second mark, and they would not score again. The Hawks win for about another 2 minutes. Moguay would have the next Atlanta Hawks field goal at the 8-minute, 26-second mark. And in that time, Jalen Green, he had a 3-point shot there at the 10-minute, 5-second mark, as well as his 9th point there at the 8-minute, 34-second mark. Tie the game up 31-31. Hawks, Rockets there. Early in the second quarter, 8-minute, 34-second mark. They squandered that early lead, the Hawks did. Okay, he did have the answer there. 33-31, aforementioned there at 8-minute, 26-second mark. Both teams, they struggled to score that quarter. As for the rest of the quarter, the Hawks had 17 points. The Rockets had 18 points. As simple as that. Pete Krejci had 8 points. He got hit on Trey's 4th and 5th assist, a couple buckets there in the final seconds. Dylan Brooks, he had a 3-point shot, one of his 3 at the 3-minute, 40-second mark there. His 8-point, 8 of 11 there in the first half for Dylan Brooks. Trae Young hit a 3-point shot, his 11-point there around the 3-minute, 12-second mark. And Alperen Sengun hit his 10th out of his 18th point at the 2-minute, 53-second mark. The first half, and that was that. Hawks led by 1, 59-49. As the game was in a virtual tie with a 1-point margin there at the half. So Trae Young in the first half, he had 11 points, 5 assists, 4 turnovers there in the first half. 4 for 11 shooting from field, 2 for 7 from 3-point land. Pete Krejci, he had 8 points. Moguay, 6 points. 3 rebounds, 3 for 4 shooting from the field. Nice first half for Moguay. Alperen Sengun, he had 10 points, 6 rebounds, 5 for 7 shooting field, 6 rebounds, 1 turnover in the first half for Alperen Sengun. Jalen Green, he had 11 points, 5 turnovers in the first half. 5 of his 7 total turnovers there in that first half. The Hawks were playing pretty scrappy defense. And the Rockets came out quite sleepy there as characterized in their 21 turnovers overall in the day. Most of those did happen in the first half, as the Rockets had 14 turnovers in that first half, only 7 turnovers in the second half for the Houston Rockets today. Jalen Green, as well in the first half, shot 5 for 11 from the field and 1 for 4 from 3-point land. His only 3-point shot on the entire evening made came that first half. Dylan Brooks, 8 points, 3 for 6 shooting from the field, 2 for 4 from 3-point land. The Hawks were able to cool off Dylan Brooks there in that second half, as he only had 3 points there. So the field goal percentage was quite a wide margin at that point, as the Hawks were shooting 41.2% compared to the Rockets' 54.1%. And how would the Hawks lead at halftime? Of course, with this wide margin field goal percentage, well, that would be the turnover story aforementioned. The Hawks had 8 compared to Rockets 14. And unfortunately, that would not come to roost for the Rockets in the day, having that aforementioned 21-16 turnover margin for the Hawks. They just kept getting second chance opportunities. They had 9 offensive rebounds compared to the Hawks' 6. They out-rebounded them overall 44-40. Oh, excuse me. No, the Hawks out-rebounded, had more offensive rebounds than the Rockets did. The Rockets really outshot them there. So they're at the 2-minute second mark. To start the third quarter, Trae Young, he got fouled by Alperen Sengun. Made both free throws there at the 11-minute, 36-second mark. The Hawks went back up by 3 points, 52-49. Trae Young was fouled again at 11-minute, 1-second mark. As the early theme for the Rockets defense in third quarter would be fouls, as Dylan Brooks, he got another foul there at 10-minute, 3-second mark. There, Rockets then had turnover at the 9-minute, 46-second mark. Allen Thompson, one of their 21 turnovers. And Trae finally got Trae transition bucket there over Jalen Green. Oh, Trae turnover there at the 9-minute and 6-second mark leads to a Jalen Green transition bucket, as Jalen Green would start to heat up there in that second half on the way to his 25-point day. the first half, only having 11 points. That would be the first 3 of his 14 points of his second half. A lot of those coming in that third quarter as the Rockets really started to cook there and overtake the Atlanta Hawks lead there. They built a nice 1-point lead at halftime. So we're going to pause really quick for station identification. This is the BOS Sports Podcast. So seconds later, Jalen Green, he had a monster alley-oop dunk. Absolute highly light play there at the 8-minute, 32-second mark. Putting the Rockets back up 53-52. That would be their first lead of the second half. Trae Young, he answered right back on the other end with a floater over Alperen Sengun, putting the Hawks up 54-53 at that point. Amen Thompson, he came right back and got an and one there at the 7-minute, 40-second mark. Made the free throw, 56-54 Rockets. And from that point on, the Rockets would not look back as Jalen Green, he would get the line again at the 7-minute, 9-second mark. It hits both for a 17th point, putting the Rockets up 58-54. Pete Krejci, he had a 3 seconds later, around the 6-minute, 55-second mark. Rockets lead by 1, 58-57. Dyson Daniels, he then fouled Jalen Green there at the 6-minute, 21-second mark. And just seconds later, the Hawks got into the bonus as DeAndre Hunter, he got a loose ball foul there at the 6-minute, 8-second mark. Hawks were in the penalty at that point. Ugh. So that foul on Sengun, the Rockets in the bonus, he hits both of them, 60-57. Rockets back up by 3. DeAndre Hunter, he hit a jumper seconds later, 5-minute, 53-second mark, 60-59. Rockets still up by 1. Sengun, he had the answer again with a dunk. Then Larry Nance scored, trading baskets there. Raptors and Hawks, Larry Nance, Alperen Sengun, 62-61. Rockets, no change in the lead. They still led by 1. Alperen Sengun back to the free throw line, 4-minute, 55-second mark. He made both of them, 64-61 Rockets, putting some space over to the Atlanta Hawks there in that third quarter. Dyson Daniels, he had a tip in there, 64-63, as they were really trading baskets. And then here comes Jalen Green, 4-minute, 23-second mark. Answer the other end, 66-63 again. DeAndre Hunter, he had a loose ball foul, sending the Rockets back to the free throw line. He mowed both of them, 68-63, Rockets over Hawks. Larry Nance Jr., he got a free throw on the other end, counting for 1 point, putting both the Hawks and Rockets at even numbers, 68-64 Rockets over Hawks. And Jalen Green, he had another bucket seconds later, 70-64 Rockets. DeAndre Hunter, he was fouled at 3-minute, 13-second mark in the third quarter. Hits both free throws, 70-65 Hawks. Maybe he only hit one of those. So, seconds, yes, he only hit one of those. As Keaton Wallace, seconds later, he had a 3-point shot there. After Jalen Green, another bucket around the 3-minute mark. Atlanta Hawks, 72-68. Tate, on the other end, had a bucket. Around the 2-minute, 41-second mark, 74-68 Rockets. Jalen Green, the 1-minute, 45-second mark, went high glass, one of his most impressive days on the play. He went drive. He was approaching the baseline. It's coming up on him, but he went high glass, banked it off there, got the nice lay-in. 76-68 Rockets there at the 1-minute, 45-second mark of the third quarter. As they were starting to pull it away, Keith Moss, he was left alone in the lane. Seconds later, defense completely broke down in transition there around the 1-minute, 20-second mark. Keith Moss was left all alone there to fend off Amen Thompson on the break. Forward against the guard, just a little bit shameful there. As Hawks need to back up their two-way player, Keaton Wallace, there in the lane. Can't just leave him alone defend on that transition break. And Keaton Wallace did the best he could. He fouled Amin Thompson. Amin Thompson did not make the bucket, but he did make both free throws, putting the Rockets up by double digits, 78-68. 1 minute, 3 second mark. DeAndre Hunter, he was fouled himself, made both free throws, 78-70. Jock Landale, he had a bucket. Tate hit some free throws. Garrison Matthews, he came back and got a 3-point buzzer beater to bring the Hawks back within single digits as after they trailed by 12 points after Landale and Tate points, 82-73. The Garrison Matthews 3-point shot pulls them within 9 points, 82-79. And as well, that was off Trae Young's 8th assist of the day. He'd only have one in the fourth quarter. Houston Rockets outscored the Hawks in that third quarter, 33-23. I think we're just going to have to pause again for a station identification. This is the BOS Sports Podcast. So the fourth quarter opens with the Rockets dunk, and then Bo Gay got a dunk. Seconds later, 84-75, Hawks still trail by 9. They're at the 10-minute, 10-second mark. Tate, he got a 16th point there, his final point of the game there, and the 9-minute, 25-second mark, fourth quarter. Put the Rockets back up by 11, 86-75. Trae Young, he answered on the other end with his 17th point. 86-77 Rockets. The Hawks and Rockets kept trading baskets there a little bit in the early fourth quarter. Things were looking hopeful, even there to the final seconds there in the first quarter. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So Aaron Holiday, he had a 3-point shot on the other end, putting the Rockets back up by double digits, 89-77. But Mo Gay, he hit a corner 3-point shot. Aforementioned yesterday's podcast, we saw the Hawks open practice in the 3-point contest. And we saw, Moge at the 3-point line. Here comes Moge hitting that clutch 3-point corner 3 at the 8-minute 45-second mark here in this game, bringing the Hawks back within single digits, 89-80. Dylan Brooks, he had the answer at the other end with his 13th point and last point, with his 11th point and his last point in the game. It was his 13th 3-point shot in the last two games, as reported by Bob Rathbun. They're at the 8-minute, 21-second mark, the fourth quarter, putting the Rockets up 92-80. Trae Young, he got a little bit of rest there in the fourth quarter, there at the 7-minute, 56-second mark, as Keaton Wallace came in. Jalen Green, he then got a layup there at the 5-minute, 17-second mark, as both teams really struggled to score there in those minutes. In between, DeAndre Hunter, he had a 3-point shot there, 4-minute, 40-second mark. 96-83 Rockets there in that fourth quarter. Dyson Daniels, he was fouled at the 4-minute, 7-second mark. He made both free throws. He had a floater seconds later, 3-minute, 44-second mark. Here comes the Atlanta Hawks. They're back down by single digits, 96-87. Pete Krejci hit a bucket later, bringing the Hawks within 7 points, 89-96 that point. Dyson Daniels, he had a steal at 3-minute, 13-second mark. And Trae Young, he missed a 3-point attempt at the other end. But Dylan Brooks did as well. And Trae was eventually fouled about a minute later. 2-minute, 19-second mark on a drive. Made both free throws. As Trae Young, he had another perfect day from the free throw line today. 5 for 5. 96-91. Rockets over the Hawks by 5 points there with a little bit over 2 minutes to go. Seconds later, Dyson Daniels, he had another steal, as he had 4 on the day. 4 steals and 1 block today for Dyson Daniels. Trae Young, he had a steal off of Jalen Green, and Pete Krejci, he had missed 3 on the other end. That felt like a bit of a rush shot at the 2-minute, 7-second mark when Dyson Daniels had the steal at the other end. They came back on offense. Pete Krejci had a missed 3. Felt like the Hawks could have gone for 2 at that point. Onyeka and Kagu, he fouled Amin Thompson on the other end, and the 1 minute 38-second mark. And of course, he made both of them 98 and 91 at that point. Trae Young, 1 minute 29-second mark. He had to score on a drive, bring the Hawks back within 5 points, 98 and 93 at that point. At the 46.9-second mark, Dyson Daniels, he had an and one after a lot of no calls. They were bumping and shoving Trae Young, pushing him down all over this game here in the fourth quarter. It just did not make sense. The Dyson Daniels, he had that and one. And after that play, Dillon Brooks, he forcibly grabbed Trae Young by the neck out of anger. And it looked like there would likely be some kind of technical or worse foul called that situation. Instead, they called a double technical. It seemed completely odd. From the replays, I mean, Dillon Brooks was the only player who got physical, grabbing Trae Young by the neck. The only thing I can imagine is Trae Young, we know he's an expert trash talker, to put it that way. If he potentially said something the refs knew that we could likely never know during a broadcast. So, it'd be interesting to hear potentially from people sitting courtside or whatnot what Trae Young said in that situation if they heard. So, from what we saw in the broadcast, looked like it should have been a technical foul on Dillon Brooks. In the story, Dyson, he hit that free throw, and if Dillon Brooks was called for a technical foul, that would have been 97 to 98 Hawks if they Raptors over Hawks if that free throw was hit. But Dyson, he hit his free throw, no technical foul called. Said it was 98 to 96 Rockets over Atlanta Hawks. With 46.9 seconds left to go in the game. And just over 30 seconds on the other end, Amin Thompson, he got away with an offensive foul charge on Trae Young. But no worries, as the Hawks, they got the ball back after an errant foul. Although, after an errant three-point shot by the Rockets, that is. With over 20 seconds left, Trae Young, he's fouled again on offense, but no call. He's knocked down by Amin Thompson on the other end. They're trying to drive the ball in the lane. And unfortunately, Atlanta Hawks, they had to burn timeout over that. Out of that timeout, the Atlanta Hawks, they got a beautiful look from three-point land for DeAndre Hunter, an open three around the 13-second mark. He missed it. Balls go out of bounds. As is wedged above the backboard. We don't see that happen too often. A little bit of entertainment there for us in that disappointing situation for Hawks fans. The Hawks tried to foul as the Rockets inbounded the ball after that play. Sengun, after the breakout, the Hawks tried to foul, no calls. Sengun got a dunk around the 2 minute, 9-second mark. Rockets got the win, as that'd be the final score, 196. So before we head into some trade deadline possibilities, we're going to have a quick recap of the segments that aired in last night's episode. Last weekend, last Saturday, went to Atlanta Hawks game. I saw some interesting things there from Dyson Daniels and V. Krejci. And so here we go. This is going to be a replay of the segments aired last night's episode. Before we get to Dyson, this is what it's like to go to the game. Opening introductions with the Georgia natural gas flamethrower. You can feel that thing from your seat. All right, getting into Dyson Daniels. There he is on the graphic screen there. Here we go. He starts out with a nice pick and roll play with Onyeka and Kagu. Onyeka sets the pick, passes to Onyeka in the lane, basket. A nice floater there. Dyson, very aggressive here. Drive to the basket, missed it. Too many passes here. The Hawks get it back off the Larry Nance miss. Offensive rebound. And passes to Onyeka, to Veet, to Bogey. And then over to Dyson Daniels in the corner. And he should have shot there, but he passed again, resulting in turnover. And nice drive here by Dyson. The Hawks, this is their first game without Jalen Johnson out. They're kind of reeling, figuring out different things to do on offense. Here, Onyeka on Kagu, he had a drive in the lane as Larry Nance Jr. set an off-ball screen for V. Krejci. elected to take a shot as Veet was absolutely on fire in this game. He had 6 3-point shots, 4 in the first half. I happened to record all 4 of them. There's his first. Here comes his second here. Drive, kick, Larry Nance. Screen, Larry Nance. Shot. Veet Krejci gets to his spot. Hits down a 3-point shot there. Here comes Veet again. Gets to the spot right there. And here he is again. They let him wide open. Mistake. Hits it. So after mentioned, the Hawks trying to figure out their offense with Jalen Johnson out, Zachary Reach out, as well. DeAndre Hunter was out this game. Here comes Trey on a drive. He tries to lob it to Clint Capella. Clint did not quite get there. Maybe a bit of miscommunication. Turnover. Raptors get fouled on the other end. So here comes the next play. The Hawks inbound it. And Trae Young's going to bring up the floor. Get a nice fast break opportunity. Try to dish it to Clint Capella in the lane. The ball slips out. And Trae gets it back. Nice floaty shot. Gets the basket. So here comes Dyson Daniels bringing the ball up the floor. We see him play some point guard with Kobe Buffkin out for the rest of the season. Pass on Onyeka Okongwu. Screen for Garrison Matthews. 3-pointer. Bang. Down. Good to see Garrison Matthews hit a 3-point shot after struggling a bit for last week. Another play, Veet Krejci bringing the ball up the floor. He plays some point guard as well. Another screen play for Garrison Matthews. That one's off. So here comes Bogey on the drive. He's going to get blocked on a shot. Get the ball back. Pass it to Veet Krejci here in the corner. He's going to swing around to Dyson. Like to see Dyson make the shot. Fortunately, that's his spot. Like to see him hit those. Here comes Dyson bringing the ball up the floor. Again. Swings around to Larry Nance Jr. in the corner. Veet Krejci here over the 3-point line. Back to Larry Nance in the post. It's going to be a 24-shot violation. Larry Nance, you got to get the ball up there and take a shot. And another Hawks turnover. The Hawks would have 22 turnovers in this game. Here's another one. Ugh. Dyson stepping out of bounds and the pass to the corner. Here comes Dyson again. Bring the ball up the floor. Trae Young the game. Pass to Larry Nance. Good screen there. Drives it in the lane. Pass on Onyeka Okongwu in the corner. Hits the 3-point shot. Onyeka's been more solid from 3 recently. Good to see. Trae Young. Interesting. Here we go. Last play, the first half for Atlanta Hawks. 22 seconds left. Trae is inbounding it. Baseline. Veet Krejci's going to come off a screen set by Dyson Daniels. As well. Runs into Portal there. But Dyson Daniels, he's fouled. They're in the lane. Loose ball foul. Aforementioned, that segment was from last night. Has an old graphic. So anyways, moving on. Before we leave tonight, we're going to explore some trade deadline possibilities for both this Atlanta Hawks team and this Houston Rockets team. They're potentially a trade partner, as the Rockets, they could use a backcourt player, a shooter, and the Atlanta Hawks sitting out tonight. Bogdanovich could be a potential fit. We'll get into that in just about a minute or two. So the Rockets, they're looking to contend in the NBA. They're the second best record in the West coming into tonight. They're just around $160 million in payroll, just a little over, depending on where you get your salary projections from. They vary sometimes between different websites. They're over the salary cap, which is around $140.5 million, just like the Atlanta Hawks. And next season, they're going to be projected to be far over the first apron as Alperen Sengun's 9-digit contract extension begins. So they're in a bit of a pickle. They need to kind of upgrade this season, would be their best strategy. They do have 2 first-round draft picks. If they could somehow turn one of those into a contend now piece, like Bogey would potentially be for the Rockets there, it would be a solid move, as you can't always count on players out of the draft to contribute. Although there's some nice players in this draft, it's certainly deeper than last year's. We've covered it in previous episodes. We'll cover a few possibilities in drafts as well later in this episode. So, Atlanta Hawks, they have a $25.266 million trade exception, which would have been handy if the Atlanta Hawks were looking to add a piece here at this trade deadline. That is, of course, over $25 million the Hawks could receive in salary back as an exception over the first apron. And of course, there's several salary exceptions here we're going to mention here for teams that are just below the first apron, but this would count even if they're over the first apron. They could use this exception, or if they were around the first apron, that is. So this came, of course, from the DeJounte Murray trade, and they can use it in the offseason as well. Something that might be a little bit more likely as teams potentially start to look at different futures. You might look at the Dallas Mavericks, aforementioned last night's episode. The time between Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving might be coming to an end with so few future draft picks. They're a little bit like the Clippers. They're better off than the Clippers. Mavericks, they have 3 draft picks between now and 2030. The Clippers, they have none. So, different cores such as those, you see them breaking up, and not really any pieces I see right away that might have to do a better look there at the Clippers. Certainly, Kawhi and James Harden, they would be a tough add for this Atlanta Hawks team in the offseason. Would not be interested in them, but the Clippers have a lot of young players, a lot of great defenders as well. They have great defense, the Clippers do. So that team breaks up over the summer. Phoenix Suns, they break up over the summer. It's $25.266 million that the Atlanta Hawks could potentially use in acquiring somebody. That won't be enough for Kevin Durant, unfortunately. That'd be enough, I think, for Bradley Beal. I'd have to go back and look at his contract. Again, that's not a player I'm not quite interested to add to Atlanta Hawks. It'd be kind of like DeJounte Murray again, which that's where that trade exception came from. So, while the Rockets, they have no trade exceptions themselves, and they must operate within the standard guidelines for teams over the salary cap, and that includes teams below the first apron, such as both the Rockets and Hawks are. Trying to figure out which direction I'm going here. So below the first apron, teams can receive up to 200% of the outgoing salary plus $250,000, any amount of salary of $250,000, and players can be aggregated. They can be combined in salary as well if they're below the first apron, even above the first apron. Teams above the second apron cannot aggregate player salaries. The outgoing salary exception for players coming in with salaries between $7.5 million and $29 million is outgoing salary plus $7.5 million. So if Bogdanovich $16.5 million trade is put out, the team receiving him would have to trade at least $9 million if they're above the salary cap. So we'll get into that in just a minute here with the Houston Rockets. And the third tier of salaries is for, of course, players with salaries above $29 million. And that has a bit tighter restrictions, as 125% of the outgoing salary plus 125% has to be retained there for above $29 million. Teams above the first apron as well, they cannot take back more salary than you send out. They're subject to these. They do not apply for those aforementioned trade exceptions for teams over the salary cap, but under the first apron. Teams over the first apron, they have to 100% salary match. They're hard cap if acquired, assign a player between sign and trade, and takes back more than 100% salary than sends out in trade. So, aforementioned, the teams above the second apron they can't combine player salaries. I mentioned on social media an interesting trade for the NBA championship contender Boston Celtics. They could potentially unload all the draft capital between now, at least most of it, between now and the end of the decade for Walker Kessler. They could combine Jaden Springer and all those picks and make something interesting out of that. It mentioned online that Walker Kessler, he's not a great 3-point shooter, potentially not fit their system, but and I'm speculating as well, the Celtics are not treating the season as seriously, potentially trying to softly tank for Rocco Zikarsky, a potential Kristaps Porzingis replacement, as he'd have to be developed after a couple of years in the draft. He's projected between selections 20 through 21. So he's a possibility for the Celtics. They own their own first-round draft pick. If they just end up with... They also have second-round draft pick as well. They could potentially combine picks, so that's a possibility for them. So back to the Rockets and the Celtics. They'd probably like to trade away Jock Landale. We saw him tonight with Steven Adams out. What did Jock Landale have tonight as far as stats? My page cut off. That always happens. It seemed like he had a decent night, although Steven Adams is really their backcourt depth, their main center. And that's potentially a piece that could be traded away. Would be Jock Landale. Bogey would potentially be a suitor at the shooting guard and let Cam play a little bit more. Cam Whitmore play a little bit more at the 3 instead of having to come in and play some shooting guard off the bench. Bogey would provide some depth there in the backcourt as shooting guard and shooter for them in a potential playoff run. This could work salary wise if the Rockets aggregated Jock Landale and Jashawn Tate. Of course, Jashawn Tate, he had an absolutely stellar game today. The Rockets might not be interested at all in trading him, especially trading any kind of draft capital with that. The Rockets, they do have 225 first-round draft picks, including an interesting scenario coming from a three-team trade announced June 26th last summer with Brooklyn and Phoenix. The Rockets will have 2 first-round draft picks in 2025 with a three-team swap, including OKC, the Clippers, and Nets. Rockets could have their own first-round draft pick and the Suns' first-rounder or the Oklahoma City Thunder first-rounder. OKC has the right to swap its pick, the first-round pick, with the Clippers. It will most certainly do that, as the Rockets can then swap their first-round pick, Clippers, the Thunder first-round pick, that is, with the Suns' first-round draft pick. So the Thunder, they swap their first-round draft pick with the Clippers. Rockets still have rights to swap that first-round draft pick with the Suns. The Rockets then have both their draft pick and the Suns' draft pick. That's the most likely scenario. The other scenario would be is if Oklahoma City, if they swap their first-round draft pick with Houston, the Rockets could then use that their draft pick swap with the Suns, and then have both the Suns and the Thunder draft pick, and that would leave the Clippers without a draft pick. So I mean the Thunder without a draft pick in that scenario. So they're going to select the Clippers draft pick. They're going to have a draft pick in 2025. The Thunder draft pick's going to be traded to the Nets, as the Rockets hold rights to do so. And then the Rockets will have either the Suns' 2025 first-round draft pick and the Houston Rockets' 2025 first-round draft pick, or if for some reason the Thunder just shoot themselves in the foot, figuratively speaking, of course, and give up their draft pick. So I'm going to pause here for station identification. You blew my nose. This is the BOS Sports Podcast. So another pointer there for the Houston Rockets. In that trade, they acquired the Suns' 2027 first-round draft pick. In that pick swap trade that made all these crazy scenarios. And that's looking absolutely money for the Houston Rockets as the Suns are looking to be on a downward trajectory. I'm guessing the Nets did not see it coming. Whoops. And so the Suns' 2027 first-round draft pick, that's probably going to be a lottery pick. You have to imagine Kevin Durant, late in his career, he's going to want to go somewhere else. Devin Booker, he might be stuck there by himself in a rebuilding situation. So, Rockets, they have 3 2026 first-round draft picks as well, including their own, and their own 2027 draft pick. So, in a proposed trade for Bogdan Bogdanovic of the Hawks, the Rockets would have to give up at least $9 million in salary. To do that, they'd have to aggregate player salaries. Jock Landale, and Josh-Sean Tate. Ugh. So that's a little bit an uphill battle. You saw Josh-Sean Tate have 16 points off the bench. They're probably not going to want to give up draft capital with that. Rockets, they do have 2 2025 first-round draft picks, including an interesting scenario, stamping from a 3-team trade. Yes. Sorry, it was on the last slide. So you'd want at least one first-round draft pick for Bogdan Bogdanovic. Taking on a player like Jock Landale, he's functional. Certainly, we saw tonight. He would not have to be bought out. He could potentially be another front court option, depth option for Atlanta Hawks. Of course, with the resurgence of Mo Gay, Atlanta Hawks might be looking on to move on from Clint Capella. We mentioned that in this podcast last night. We explored a scenario with the Mavericks. That scenario was a little bit off base as apparently I was looking up the hockey. Apparently NBA teams cannot retain salaries. Only NHL teams can retain salaries. No salary retainment. Mavericks would have to combine about 4 players. 3 or 4 players that are not in the rotation. Be an uphill battle as Atlanta Hawks. They're maxed out right now with 18 players, the maximum roster size for an NBA team. 3 two-way players, 15 NBA full active roster, 12 on the bench there. Between games, and Cody Zeller, of course, is out. He's been away from the team. He'll likely have to be bought out. If Bogdan Bogdanovic is traded to the Houston Rockets for this package, I would see the Rockets probably more apt to adding a second-round pick to that package. Josh-Sean Tate and Jock Landale for Bogdan Bogdanovic. I think it'd still be a nice pickup there for the Rockets. Add a second-round pick. I don't quite like it. Josh-Sean Tate, of course, he had a great night tonight, but he's averaged not very impressive numbers over the season, so I would want at least a first-round draft pick for Bogey. So other teams, they could be a suitor for Bogey, such as the Orlando Magic, who desperately need three-point shooting. Miami Heat, a 3-team trade. Depending on what happens with Jimmy Butler, they could potentially be looking for more wing players there. The Grizzlies, they could use more shooting as well. Although it'd be a bit of a challenge salary-wise, as they don't quite have many pieces that they can combine for the salary to give up for Bogdan Bogdanovic. We're going to explore that in a minute as well with Clint Capella and how he could potentially be traded for the Grizzlies. They more need a front court player there for the Grizzlies. So we'll explore that in just a minute. The Clippers, they have the potential, the cap space for a player like Bogdan Bogdanovic to work out a trade like that. They could aggregate salaries and all that, but they don't have any draft picks until 2030. Aforementioned, of course, a few minutes ago. Houston Rockets. So let's get into some of the hot trade topics of the day. De'Aaron Fox, as listed, as announced by Shams Charania, is on the trade block. They're listening for offers for De'Aaron Fox, the Kings are. And could the Houston Rockets potentially be a landing spot for De'Aaron Fox? And yes, he could be. Fred VanVleet would be the key piece, another part of that trade. Of course, the Kings would have to aggregate salary themselves. They'd have to combine Trey Lyles and De'Aaron Fox. I'm not sure about the Houston Rockets roster size right offhand. They might have to send a player back, well, or waive or buy out a player to make that work, roster size wise. But De'Aaron Fox and Trey Lyles for Fred VanVleet would work salary wise. So after that, it would just be a matter of draft capital. As De'Aaron Fox is, well, he might chemistry wise and fit wise be maybe not ideal for the Rockets. He's certainly considered a better player and more valuable player production wise. So likely the Rockets would have to add draft capital and a Fred VanVleet trade for both Trey Lyles, he's decent forward as well, and De'Aaron Fox as well. So other players on the trade block aforementioned or Bradley Beal, who was moved to the bench there for the Phoenix Suns. Things are not working out for the Phoenix Suns. And, who knows what will happen with that situation. Just kind of one of those mysteries here. We'll see how much they break up that team at the deadline. If they still try to go for anything. The Golden State Warriors as well are absolutely reeling. Stephen Curry is getting older. I see him being loyal to the Warriors, though. I see him staying, giving the fans whatever his victory tour for that dynasty, that great Warriors dynasty they had, and I think he'll just fade in the sunset. I don't think Stephen Curry's going to demand a trade somewhere. Although, and he has a huge salary, like I think $55 million salary cap hit this year. That'd just be impossible for any team trying to contend to take on. But there's one team, Houston Rockets, with Fred VanVleet's monstrous contract size. They could trade Fred VanVleet for Stephen Curry. Rockets would have to aggregate salaries. I'll have to look at that. And I'll post about that later in the week. The potential, as I did not look into that as much. I did not get a chance to look into that. The Fred VanVleet for Stephen Curry, there's about $13 million there in cap differential. So the Rockets would have to send a player back. Maybe someone like Jock Landale, aforementioned. So for Atlanta Hawks, some trade possibilities. We explored that last night's episode, and I covered and corrected a few minutes ago possibilities of Clint and Mavericks. That's going to be pretty tough with the Atlanta Hawks roster size. And so they would have to trade. It'd be quite Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber, Quentin Grimes, and Dante Exum. And the Hawks would have to somehow get rid of 3 players as well. So that'd have to be some kind of 3-way trade. But not entirely impossible. So we're running now scenarios, places to trade Clint Capella, as the teams with payroll flexibilities who are contenders don't quite seem to need centers quite as much. The Memphis Grizzlies are one interesting possibilities, and with the emergent Scottie Pippen Jr., the Grizzlies could potentially see Marcus Smart as an odd piece out. Although it seems a little bit unlikely because they just traded for him a year or two ago. Trade would look like Clint Capella and Garrison Matthews, another expiring contract for Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr., plus the Memphis Grizzlies 2025 first-round draft pick. Seems like a bit of a steep price for the Memphis Grizzlies, but Clint Capella and Garrison Matthews on that Memphis Grizzlies team, that would be a very interesting trade for the Grizzlies. And make them very scary in that debatably open Western Conference. We saw this Houston Rockets team almost lose to this Atlanta Hawks team. And not to put things too lightly, but Atlanta Hawks are banged up. They're injured. They're missing Reza Shea. They're missing Jalen Johnson. They're missing Kobe Buffkin for the year. So the Rockets, they're vulnerable in a 7-game series. The Memphis Grizzlies could absolutely take them to town. Clint Capella and Garrison Matthews, they'd be a couple interesting players, but in first round draft pick would make that palatable for the Atlanta Hawks. Memphis is 25 first round draft pick. And then the Atlanta Hawks, you get Marcus Smart. And he's a nice player. He's been oft injured this year. Got a huge contract, owed a little bit over $21.5 million next year. And so the Hawks probably could not trade him to another team. Maybe. But the Hawks might have to look at buying him out, which that'd be an expensive buyout. Not sure if Marcus Smart would be a fit on this Atlanta Hawks roster next year. The Hawks are trying to build a championship team. He's a great player and certainly would contribute to the right situations, championship team, but I'm not sure about the Hawks. So the Magic, they have cap room and need shooters and could use a nice backup center as well. They have a nice backup center. They do have cap room, the Magic do, but they need shooters as well. So they're probably not a landing spot for Clint Capella. The Pacers are rumored to maybe be trading Miles Turner. There are some impasses there between the Pacers and Miles Turner in contract extension negotiations. Maybe the Pacers want to trade away Miles Turner and add Clint Capella, who's eligible to be re-signed with bird rights at the end of the season. So there is a sector online of some Hawks fans that want to trade Trae Young. Bad on you. Well, he's my favorite player on the Hawks, and it seems unlikely that relationship will end soon, as Trae Young and the Hawks are like peanut butter and jelly. Seems like an unbreakable bond right now. And the only potential scenarios I can think of are just monstrously high trading asking prices that would probably not make much sense for other teams. It has been suggested before by other people. Trae Young to the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs, I think, seem to like their core there, and maybe don't want to trade away Stephon Castle, which I think would be a must in return for Trae Young. The Hawks, they need a point guard. And then the Hawks would also have to add Zach Collins and Chris Paul to make the trade work out. As well as Spurs would get Garrison Matthews, another shooter if they're trying to go for an NBA championship run. Probably a year too early for the Spurs. They do have a ton of draft picks and probably need to trade that and coagulate that into some kind of core piece for the Spurs. That might be De'Aaron Fox. I mentioned that online. You'd have to aggregate a couple players there to make that work. The Spurs would. Zach Collins would be a potential player as well in a De'Aaron Fox trade. They'd have to aggregate a few players there. The Spurs would get De'Aaron Fox. But it would be an interesting landing spot there. And the Spurs, they have plenty of draft picks. They have plenty of draft capital. They could trade for De'Aaron Fox. He could leave after his contract's up in a year or two. And they could not blink an eye. They'll still have plenty of draft picks. So for Atlanta Hawks, aforementioned for Trae Young. Trae Young were traded to the Spurs for Zach Collins, Chris Paul, Stephon Castle. Ooh. Hate to imagine this scenario. I love Trae Young. So for the Hawks, would want no less in draft capital in return. The Spurs, the Atlanta Hawks 2025 draft pick back from the Spurs from the DeJounte Murray trade. The Spurs 2025 first round draft pick. Chicago's 2025 second round draft pick, which the Spurs own. The Spurs 2027 the Spurs 2026 second round draft pick, which if they're going to get Trae Young and all this other stuff, they're probably going to have a pretty good record in 2026. That second round draft pick is going to be a high second round draft pick. And Atlanta's 2027 first round draft pick back, as well as a 2031 first round draft pick. So that is 4 first round draft picks and a second round draft and 2 second round draft picks. 6 picks with Stephon Castle and some aggregated salaries for Young. I think that's what he's worth. Absolutely. So we love him, and it would be a gamble for Spurs. And projected Arian Fox trades are for less. We'll see if anything happens. I don't think that happens. And of course, Trae Young always won at some point in his career to win an NBA championship. Hopefully it's with the Hawks. But if it's not one day, I'll still cheer for him. So would not be interested in trading for Bradley Beal. So the Atlanta Hawks, this trade deadline, likely looking at players such as Bogdanovich, and Capella, 2 players are sitting out today for the Atlanta Hawks. Rumored to be on the trade block, especially Bogey, with no injury excuse given. I hate to see him leave. Certainly have always enjoyed and loved these players. Magical run back in 2021. Always be great memories. And we'll see if they are traded. So before we say goodbye, I'm going to have one last station identification. This is the BOS Sports Podcast. I want to thank everyone for joining me, on this 43rd episode on the BOS Sports Podcast. We'll be back Saturday with another monstrous episode, our 44th episode of the BOS Sports Podcast. Coming up, next game, Thursday night, will be on TNT, Hawks Cavaliers. There, let's see what time it is. I click on 7 p.m. TNT. I got that confused in the last episode as well. Tonight's game was not on TNT, quite obviously. Thursday night's game is. Saturday night's game, Saturday afternoon, the Hawks are facing the Pacers, so we have next episode of BOS Sports Podcast. Then be sure to stream previous episodes of the BOS Sports Podcast. Stream Bar Soap, music on Spotify, new track coming out soon. And we'll see you again soon. Saturday night.